Rare Disease and Medical Challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is, how do we adapt? That's the focus of It Happened to Me. We help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, hosts Cathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
Joining us on It Happened to Me today is Lanie Etkind. Lanie was appointed Executive Director of the Familial Dysautonomia Foundation in 2017. Lanie's professional background has included fundraising roles in both healthcare and in the performing arts. Lanie recently completed a certificate program in nonprofit leadership in cooperation with Northwestern University. Also joining us today is Rita Taryan and her daughter, Keshi Taryan-Kigel. Keshi is a familial dysautonomia, or FD, patient in her early 30s, and she and her mom will provide a personal perspective about living with and managing the symptoms of FD.
Well, welcome, Lanie, Rita, and Keshi. It's so nice to have you as guests on It Happened to Me. Today, we are going to be discussing FD, or as it is sometimes called, Riley syndrome. All right, let's start with the basics. Lanie, why did you decide to take this job as the head of this foundation? And had you heard of this symptoms? Had you heard of this disease before taking the job?
Well, coincidentally, I had. I had been contacted because the previous executive director had passed away, unfortunately, and they were looking for a new person to step into the role after more than a decade of his tenure. And even though it's a very, very rare disease, which we'll talk about later, I actually had heard of FD, and actually my best friend's nephew has it. And he lived in my community. He lives in my community, and I knew when he was born. So I was familiar with FD when I took on this position. I didn't know as much as I know now, though.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've learned an awful lot. And Keshi, welcome to the program. You are a patient with FD. Can you describe what this syndrome is?
Yes. I mean, I straight out, like, in as simplest terms as I can say, I mean, it's a genetic disorder that affects my sensory and autonomic nervous systems. It affects certain things that the human body does automatically for an average individual. It doesn't happen automatically for me. So, like, I don't produce tears. I don't feel heat or temperature or pain as well as someone else does. I mean, it's yeah, that's generally speaking what FD is.
So Rita, you're the mom of a patient with FD. How would you describe it? And tell me, how did you know that your daughter needed special attention? Was this in utero or as an infant? When did symptoms start to occur?
So I think Keshi did a nice job of describing what FD was. It affects the nervous system and the sensory system and the autonomic system, and well, it's really quite, all the symptoms are really quite global in nature. I mean, everything from bone density to
gastrointestinal issues to blood pressure, heart rate. I mean, just everything you could imagine. With Keshi, we actually found out quite late. Most people with FD do find out quite early when the baby is born. There's already issues with Keshi as well. There were, but we didn't know what they were, and she overcame them. So she was born. When she was born, she was immediately taken to ICU because she had seizures and she was suffering from apnea spells. So she was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. Yeah, she had difficulty breathing. Yeah, yeah. But that was for 2 weeks, and then somehow she overcame that. I don't know what was happening, and we brought her home. She had difficulty breastfeeding, but again, bottle feeding, she was able to. This is very typical of FD infants. But again, she overcame it, and this was all in Canada. So the doctors really had no idea what FD was. So these were just sort of just random issues that she sort of grew out of. She had some gross motor difficulties growing up. Speech came a little bit later. So all of these things sort of suggested that she was unique, but but she's my only baby, and I just thought, well, okay, so this is just this is who Keshi is. It wasn't until she was 5 and we actually heard from someone else about FD that who suggested that maybe sort of this collection of unusual symptoms might be FD, and we took a trip from Toronto to New York where she was diagnosed. And it's a good thing that she was, because sort of more serious things came later. So yeah.
Well, speaking of those symptoms, Lanie, I wanted to ask you, so Keshi may be experiencing some of the symptoms, but there are a myriad of symptoms that are pronounced in FD patients, such as swallowing, walking problems, blood pressure spikes, as you mentioned, Rita, vomiting, weak bones, spinal deformity, dry eye, and many more. So Keshi may have a milder symptoms. What do most patients experience, Lanie?
Well, it's oftentimes said, and I'm sure Keshi and Rita, you both have heard this before. If you've seen one FD patient, you've seen one FD patient. Um, each one of them experiences FD differently. And each one of them has, it manifests itself differently in everybody's body. And some people struggle more with digestive issues, and some people struggle more with different parts of the body that it impacts. So, every person that has it really, it impacts them differently. But a lot of, as Rita was mentioning, a lot of babies have trouble eating and swallowing. What was discovered was that, well, many babies got pneumonias and got scarred lungs. So feeding tubes were introduced probably about 2 or 3 decades ago to help ameliorate that, and to make sure that people had healthy lungs, and that really helped keep them alive a lot longer. And we can talk about that more later too. But so eating is a problem for some. Eating and swallowing is a problem for some. And crisis is something that many will say is the worst part of FD. And some people have crisis every day. Some people have it every week. Some people have never had it. And some people, have it every couple of years, but it's a very, their faces get all red, and they sweat profusely, and they're nauseous, and they throw up, and their blood pressure goes all wacko, and it really, it's very difficult to function. I don't know, Keshi, if that's something that you suffer from too much, but you can probably talk about it better than I can if you've experienced it. But I think The thing to note about FD is although it presents at birth, as we were talking about, it's also progressive and degenerative. So things that may be present, in a younger person.
Does it always present at birth, or can that, as with Keshi, can that be a variable?
Well, even Keshi presented at birth. She just wasn't diagnosed at birth. So it's something, as opposed to other kinds of dysautonomia where people, like adults, might get it or adults might learn that they have it. You are born with FD. It's a genetic disorder and you are born with it. So not every symptom may manifest itself at birth, but you have it at birth. The diagnostic journey for, some people are diagnosed in the hospital as infants if they're born in the right hospital and the doctors know to look for it. But some people, like Keshi, not till 5. I've heard of people not diagnosed till 9 years old because it's just so rare. Doctors don't even know what they're looking at.
Wow.
So, Rita, as a parent, my heart goes out to you because you're trying to manage different symptoms that your daughter is experiencing. And yet, also as a parent, you want your child to have as normal a life as possible. Can you talk about that delicate balance?
Yeah, thank you. It is, it's the worry is probably the biggest thing I have to deal with. I think what Keshi has to deal with is more significant. So Keshi does have crises. She does not have a feeding tube, so when she has crises, we well, it only happens about 2 or 3 times a year, but then she's hospitalized for it, and that's the only place that she can be treated for it. And it's always sort of an emergency situation, and rather traumatic. So that's one of the biggest things that she deals with. So we live very near each other. Keshi actually is living independently as of a couple of years ago, but we live very near each other, so that she's only a phone call away. And she works from home, so which again is just, well, she's very fortunate to be able to do that, and she's very good at what she does. She can tell you about it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I work with a nonprofit called Kulanu. They provide different services to isolated returning Jewish communities around the world.
Wonderful. Congratulations. That's really beautiful that you do that.
Thank you.
Now, when were you old enough to understand your diagnosis of FD, and how did you then and do you now cope with that knowledge?
So I was thinking about this the other day and trying to figure out, honestly, trying to remember when I would have first understood what I have. And I don't think I mean, thinking back on it, I'm not sure it really sunk in until I was at least maybe 7 or 8. I mean, even then I was still growing. I was still like, I was still very young. So, I mean, I could only understand so much, but I did know that I feel, strangely enough, you were saying how for some individuals living with FD, symptom, like, it becomes more severe as you age. Like, yes, I think that is true, but I also think, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I feel like, I mean, I cope better now than I did when I was younger. um, um, I and it coping has sort of been a combination of um, just life experiences. Um,
Well,
Building, well,
yeah,
yeah.
no, and life experiences and kind of building a toolkit, I would think, of how to manage things. And I'm wondering, what are the most helpful modifications and strategies that you've developed for yourself as an adult for managing your daily life? Is there anything you
Oh,
do differently because of FD concerns or
right.
realizations?
Um, I mean, I take it day by day, honestly. I, I keep busy.
Sounds
I,
like it.
as, I, um, I exercise daily. I have a stationary bike that I use it when on days I don't go out. I mean most days I do go out, but on days I don't, I have like a bike that I use that helps me stay physically um just physically comfortable. And
I don't know if I can interrupt you and help you a little bit. Um, so Keshi, in response to this question, Keshi when I think that she makes and has always sort of especially recently made she makes calculations as to what she's able to do and what she's not able to do. So for example, if she tries to minimize how far she has to walk, she takes breaks when she walks because she has difficulty sometimes. She's very careful about who she sees in these days, especially with COVID. So there's a lot of there's some aspect of isolation involved in this, um, and yeah, and in terms of the question that you asked before about when she became aware, I think especially because she her first 10 years were in Canada and there weren't too many people there with FD. Yeah, I think it was difficult. It was more difficult in a way, and because I think in school, I think she felt quite isolated and she was bullied sometimes as well for well, just she fell a lot, and other children sort of recognized that there was a difference, but she wasn't quite able to understand what that difference was until she moved here, and then she met other individuals with FD, and I think that really made a huge difference when we moved here. And the very first year that we moved here, Keshi went to a camp, Camp Simcha, where there were many other young girls with FD, and I think that's when that's when it really she became comfortable with it, and just being having to also have the
Well,
same
Rita,
thing.
were
So
there modifications or strategies that you used all around your home and your life that really helped her manage her daily life as a child?
Yeah, I mean, well, when she was a child, I think that it was mostly just keeping her close and making sure that she's safe. Really, we didn't until we moved to New York City. We really didn't understand. We just didn't have the medical knowledge that the FD clinic provides. But as soon as we moved here, all of a sudden, yeah. And so now, for example, Keshi sleeps in a bed that can raise her head, so she sleeps at 30 degrees. which eliminates some of the problems with low blood pressure during the night. So she used to, for example, during the night, wake up and feel faint, and she would sometimes fall in the bathroom. So I would, get up with her and walk her to the bathroom, walk her back. But ever since she has that bed, just little things like that, it made a huge difference. And of course, when she went through, as she developed, as she grew older, went through her teenage years, it's very common with FD. Sorry about the noise. About it's New York, exactly. Good old New York, which we're very grateful for. She developed scoliosis and kyphosis, like most FD individuals do. And again, it was so fortunate for us to be here because she could be diagnosed with it before it caused serious injuries to her lungs, and she got surgery for that. So again, that was shortly after we moved to New York. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Keshi, I've got a hats off to you. I love that you have a job. You must have gone to school, to college in order to have the job, or was there a certificate program or something like that you were able to do, or you lucked out and found a great job that you were great at?
Oh my goodness. So it has been, thank you. I mean, really, it has been an ever, I mean, it's been leading up to this, I guess, in a way. I did go to school. I earned my BFA in at the School of Visual Arts, and then after graduating, I did a lot of volunteer work at even at the FD Foundation. I volunteered there, and at other nonprofits as well. And then I started looking for a job and practicing my interview skills, because that is something that I had trouble with for a long time. Thank you. Um, I honestly, I think I did luck out in finding Kulanu, because they are very small. We are a very small nonprofit that only a few people, and also the truth of the matter is that the president recently passed away, and so we're kind of presently we're just trying to figure out who does what now, and
That's wonderful. It sounds like a full and meaningful position and experience, a life experience, and just mazel tov, if I can say. It's wonderful.
Thank you. I know that it's I know I'm lucky in a way. I know there are a lot of people in the FD community who have difficulty finding work or
Holding it down, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Well, Rita, I want to switch gears for a minute. This I know is an inherited genetic condition, but it sounds like I have a very mild form of a very rare genetic condition, and my variant appears exclusively in the Ashkenazi or Eastern European Jewish community, those with ancestors from Eastern Europe. And this sounds like it might also be an Ashkenazi genetic condition. Is that true?
It is. It is. And, like most Ashkenazi Jews, her father and I were tested for all that was available at the time. All that was available.
And this was rare enough it wasn't on the panel.
Well, they hadn't discovered the gene. Yeah, Keshi was born in 1991, and it was in 2000, and Lady, you probably remember better than I, 2002? better than I,
It was about
2002?
2000 that they
2000
discovered the
that they
gene. Yeah.
discovered the gene. Yeah, so we had absolutely no idea that we were carriers. We were
Yeah. Are
carriers.
there, now that you know about it, is there any known family history with this rare disease?
Well, I mean, I know that Keshi has a cousin who also has it. So it's definitely in our family. Yeah.
And are there, switching gears again, are there treatments now for the symptoms of FD? Were they around when Keshi was younger?
I don't know, Lainey, if you want to, do you mean treatments for,
For
I'm
the
sorry.
various, Beth had outlined all different types of symptoms like problem swallowing, dry eye, problems sometimes I think with walking. And I'm just wondering, right,
blood
if
pressure
there's
spikes.
exactly, and if there's treatments for the individual symptoms, or if they're later also, like the gene was late in getting discovered, were the symptoms readily available individually, or is it something that now is much more available and apparent than it was 20 or 30 years ago?
So I think Lainey will probably be able to answer this much better than I do. I can only just say that it's really each symptom is treated individually. So as because there's such a myriad, as you said, myriad of symptoms, each one, and there's no cure, each symptom is treated as best it can. Yeah, and Lainey, maybe you can. Lainey,
Well,
maybe
I
you
know
can
that with
elaborate on
my
that.
rare variant, it's a mild form, but again, with this Wolfram, each individual symptom is treated individually. There is no global until there's genetic work and gene editing, and the future hopefully holds prospects for that. But there's no global type of treatment. It is individual. Individual symptoms are treated
Right, and
individually.
that's pretty much where we're at with FD. We've certainly advanced the level of care where 30 years ago, people born with FD, it was considered a fatal childhood illness. I mean, people were dying before they were 10 years old, mainly because they were aspirating food and they're getting pneumonias and damaging their lungs and dying from pneumonia. And the other thing that people were dying from was sleep apnea, stopping breathing while they were sleeping. So many people that have FD, and I don't know if this includes you or not, Keshi, but many people who have FD sleep with CPAPs or BiPAPs to keep them breathing during the night. So that's something that has helped keep people alive. Same thing with the feeding tubes. If they're not swallowing food and not getting food into their lungs by accident, then they're preventing those. And exactly, they're preventing those aspirations. So a lot of it is preventing bad things from happening that could be fatal. And as Rita said, treating individually symptoms. So the dry eyes, Keshi, I'm sure you put drops in your eyes many times a day. And so all of those kinds of things. There's no FDA approved treatment for FD. But as Catherine was just alluding to, genetics is the way to go. I mean, now that we've discovered the gene, we are working on gene therapies that will fix the mutation of the gene and hopefully slow or stop the progression of the disease. And that's really the more holistic approach as opposed to treating the symptoms. But we are getting better at treating the symptoms too.
That's wonderful. But Lanie, I want to switch gears with you. And how does the FD Foundation support patients and their families like Keshi and like Rita?
Well, I hope you guys will agree that mainly what we do is we raise money. And most of the money that we raise goes to the Dysautonomia Center at NYU. We helped found that center 50 years ago, and we helped support it and keep it going. And that's really
And is that what helps Keshi and Rita so much they were talking about in New York?
Exactly. I mean, that's what Rita was talking about. And so that's really the premier center for care and treatment of FD in the world. So that even if you're fortunate enough to live in the New York area, you can go there for primary care. If you're not fortunate enough to live nearby, they also consult with patients' local medical teams to provide guidance and advice. We also during the pandemic instituted telemedicine. So, even people in England can see the doctors here in New York. So the foundation funds the center. We also, once a year, we hold an FD Day, an educational program where patients and families can attend and learn from the doctors and the scientists as to what the latest treatments are and what the latest research is. We really try to build a community of support for people who have FD. We have a newsletter, we have a website, we offer some social activities for people with FD and some support services for patients and families. So we really try to be a little bit of everything to everyone. And of course, I should not have neglected, we invest in research. And we have a scientific advisory board that is pursuing a number of very promising strategies to treat FD from the research side. Yeah, to treat.
Excellent.
Lanie, are there clinical trials going on now?
Rita, you're nodding your head.
Well, I thought so. I think so. I mean, I think in Israel there's a lab that has been working on FD for quite a while. But as to the details of the clinical trials, I'm not an expert. So.
Well, there's a lot of different research at a lot of different phases, and we're very fortunate for a small disease. There are a lot of brilliant scientists that are working on FD, and we're very fortunate. And the good thing about that is because it's a neurological disease, a lot of the work that we're investing in and that is happening has the potential to impact other more common neurological diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and ALS. So it's not just helping these 300 and some people who are living with FD today. But we anticipate
How many people are living with FD today? If you could say that again.
Today what we know is 310 around the world.
Wow. And how many in the United States?
About half of those are in the United States. Most of the rest of them are in Israel, but there are a smattering in Europe, South America, Australia. And the half is North America. Canada has some too. Mexico has a few. But, and there are two, as Rita said, there are 2 centers in Israel as well that we collaborate with.
So Lanie, you said, so this is now on the carrier screening, this mutation would be picked up now? Well, that's terrific. So
so part of our mission is awareness and, making sure that people know that they need to get tested and people who were tested a long time ago need to get retested.
Well, this is really, isn't this the issue about getting tested? And you bring up the point of being retested, that new discoveries will alter the testing process because they'll be added to the carrier screening. And the other, I think, big issue is that people tend not to be tested until actually they're pregnant, as opposed to when they start planning their families. And I wondered, in thinking about this, how to encourage people to get tested. Is there anything going on with maybe faith-based communities to encourage couples, possibly in the planning of their nuptials, to get screened?
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, one is there's an organization called JScreen that works out of Emory, I believe.
Yes.
Emory,
Yes,
I believe.
Taryn has been on this
Has been a
podcast,
guest.
who is the genetic counselor that's the head of J-Screen.
Yes.
Okay, so we partner with them quite often, and in fact, the FD Foundation has sponsored testing sessions on college campuses, for example, for awareness. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, college is really kind of the right time to do it. Um, yeah, and but on the other end of the spectrum, in religious communities, there is an organization called Doria Sharim, and they test people, but they don't know those people who go through Doria Sharim don't know what they might be found to be carriers of. They just are told if two partners are compatible or not to be matched. So it's sort of like a pre-match testing. Like you two should. It's okay for you two to get married. It's not okay for you two to get married. That's all so they don't actually know what they're carriers of. They just know if it's okay, if it's safe to be with that person or not. Because obviously, because for FD and for a lot of things, it's recessive, and so both parents have to be carriers in order for them to pass it along to the child. So
To J-Screen and the panel testing where it does identify specific conditions involved, does carrier screening and genetic testing have the opportunity to change things for FD?
well, obviously you can't change your carrier status, but knowledge is power, as they say. So if you know that you're a carrier, and if you know that your spouse is a carrier, so let's assume we're not talking about these religious communities where they would not get married, there are still ways to have healthy babies. Um, Using, selecting fertilizing the embryos and testing the embryos and selecting the healthy embryos to implant. So, and thank God for modern science. But that has meant that, I mean, unfortunately, in the days of, when Keshi was born, that technology did not exist and that knowledge did not exist. You couldn't test for it. You didn't know. But nowadays, if there are parents where if there are situations where both parents know they are carriers and they want to have children,
They could do. I remember in the 90s, Keshi, when before I was thinking of having children, the only disease you went to the hospital to get a blood test for was Tay-Sachs. And we met our best friends at the hospital also getting tested for Tay-Sachs there. But there was nothing like this that Lanie's talking about that can make a difference in the knowledge and having that power. And it's just amazing where science has come.
Yeah, we feel this foundation invested millions of dollars to find the gene. And we feel very proud that we've been able to facilitate the birth of thousands of healthy babies to carrier families. Yeah, it's sort of our gift to the Jewish people.
Absolutely. What a gift. What a gift. Well, Lanie,
Yeah.
is there any advice you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Well, and this is not just for Jewish people. I mean, everybody should get tested. I mean, the knowledge is out there, and you would be silly not to take advantage of it. If you're planning on having a baby, you should know what's in your family and what's in your genes, and there are things that can be prevented, and there are things that can't be prevented. But yeah, knowledge is power.
Wow. And Rita, is there any advice that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I think parent support, I think, is very important. I know that I definitely benefited from moving to New York City and meeting other parents. The FD Day that we have once a year at NYU Langone is a huge, wonderful event where we share information and also just sort of come together and support each other emotionally. So that the parent support and being a part of the community is has been wonderful, and I encourage it whenever possible.
Sounds like that the foundation has been transformative in Keshi's life. that meeting other young people who have the same condition has taken the mystery out of what she's experiencing and has almost normalized her life. And it's been such a powerful influence. We here at It Happened to Me are very interested in rare diseases, but we also are very interested in how people cope with the challenge that they are facing. And it sounds like your decision to move to New York, to place your daughter in an environment where other people are facing the same challenge, has been extraordinarily transformative. And I congratulate you on having the guts to pick up and leave your country, move to a place that was better suited for your daughter's well-being and health.
Really, that's wonderful. And are there any other resources that you found incredibly helpful or supportive, or something you'd like to suggest other people listening consider with any rare disease, not just FD?
I mean, we really, our primary source of support really is the FD Foundation and the FD Clinic. Yeah. I mean, there have been other Jewish organizations in New York City that are helpful to individuals of, to all Jewish people in the city. So, for example, Camp Simcha, which was wonderful and really was just a joy for Keshi. I think she attended 6 years in a row, 6 summers in a row, and it was it was the first time that I really saw her very mixing with other people and feeling really truly happy. But there's also Keshi, the organization that you that you're connected with as well. That's with Fagi and Hadassah is also a really wonderful.
A few of the people so the organization is it's called Yala. It's standing. I hope I'm not wrong about this. It's standing for young adults loving life always. I think something like that. Thank you. Yeah, a few of the people involved have also been involved in Camp Simcha. Well, basically, it's for young adults with disabilities who, and we get together, we go on trips together. We just recently took a trip to, last summer, we just recently took a trip to, Philadelphia for a couple of days, and explored the state a little bit, and we a few years ago we went on a birthright trip.
Wow!
So,
which is a trip for those that may be listening that don't know, it's a trip to Israel with young contemporaries.
Yes, no, it was great. It was wonderful because I was with people I knew, first of all. And I know that's not all. I mean, no, for me that worked. And we went, like, there were accommodations, and we did things that we were physically able to do and enjoy, and yeah, just like the people involved. I'm really good friends with a few of the people involved, and it's just such a lovely group of people.
It sounds like, and with Rita's help, you really have just benefited from camps, from schools, from programs that have really been life-changing and moves.
She's a pretty great mother. I must say.
Sure sounds like it. It sure does. Well, Keshi, I got to ask you, is there any parting advice that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I want to say that, not giving up, and because I mean I can only speak for myself and say that like it took a long time for me to get to where I am now with my confidence and stuff like that, and I feel like it's just something that it's a good question.
Oh, well, I can't.
I think, Keshi, I think what you're saying is being supported by a community, and you have
Yeah.
thrived as a result, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful,
It's
and it
inspiring.
really is
It's
inspiring. And
Thank
each of
you.
us are on a journey, Keshi, and your journey is a wonderful one because it's led to such a full life. And each of us may stumble along the way. That's part of life.
Yeah.
And hopefully each of us will have someone in our corner, as you have had your mom, that helps us when we may stumble.
and Lanie.
Yes, yes. But I am
Yeah.
so
Yes.
glad that you found this foundation in New York and found the camp and the community to help you get to the beautiful part where you are today. And you've been a terrific guest, Keshi. And I want to thank you for giving
Thank
of your time
you.
and sharing your story with us. And Rita and Lanie,
Absolutely.
also thank you for being guests on It Happened to Me.
This episode has raised such awareness for FD, which is a rare genetic disease, but it's also illustrated beautifully how a patient and her family managed living with it and thriving. And really an inspirational story for anyone living with medical challenges, that there's more at the other, working through things than there is in just giving up. And it's beautiful. It's also been a wonderful episode to highlight how genetic testing and carrier screening really have opportunities and possibilities for creating future changes in the atmosphere of genetic and rare diseases. So thank you all so much for being here today. Be well, and just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Pleasure.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. That's ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. Again, that's ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would also really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app, probably Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenges community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Cathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman. Steve Holzenbach is our media engineer and co-producer. Myself, Dineen from DNA Today, is our marketing lead and co-producer. Ashlyn Enokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.